or is this coming up?
We're, yeah, we wanted to introduce it to you tonight, see if you had any questions or comments or thoughts on it. And then we will be presenting the schedule at the May 27th City Council meeting.
Okay, thanks.
But I will note that as part of the parting ways with SCJ, an email to the council did go out informing them that we're likely looking at a June 2026 timeframe, and we did not get any negative feedback. So.
Okay, I have a question. I know you had mentioned, we looked at this timeline and you had mentioned that we're going to do good work and as much as we can to make the deadlines. Do you have, is there a certain priority assigned to the tasks, like certain chapters that are a heavier lift that we are prioritizing or?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. Yes, land use and housing.
Okay.
Are the priorities. Transportation and capital facilities are the second tier, and that is primarily, we use the work done by Public Works for transportation and capital facilities. So I did meet with the Public Works Director and the city engineer just yesterday to basically start our coordination and update them on where we're at with our comprehensive plan. They updated me on where they are with their utility planning. And, they had some data requests from me already that they need from the planning department in order to continue to proceed. So those are the heavy lists for planning. For our department, it will be the housing and the land use. But yet I don't want to underemphasize that the other chapters are just as important too. The climate and resiliency is a brand new chapter. It's under state requirements. There is a lot of information about that. The economic development chapter has importance and is maybe a more publicly or outward facing outreaching chapter where we need to engage with our economic development council and our chamber and local businesses. The natural environment chapter is actually really important as well, and make sure we're updating that to ensure we're in compliance with growth management and best available science. So one of the things that Jax has been doing is creating a critical area map for use for the planning department. It's the first map that will be ours. We use county mapping, which has good data, but this will be more SQUIM specific. So a lot of so again, it's like, yes, there's these priority chapters, but there is no there's no one that we kind of check the box on. Like even with Parks and Rec, I thought, okay, this one, this is pretty new, recent plan. It should be good. And then when I went to the parks manager, she's like, well, actually the board was talking about updating these. I'm like, okay, we'll go update them then. So, so everyone's going to have some attention to it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions at all or concerns or anything, any clarification? Yes.
So SCJ's out. There's virtually no professional member helping SQUIM go through this that started at the beginning with us. And that is a concern for me personally.
Okay.
Wait a minute. She is a professional.
No, that started with the process. When we kicked this off,
Okay.
that entire team is gone.
True.
And we are behind schedule. And I know it's not our job to oversee, but it does present a concern for me. And I don't know, other than to express it, I guess I'm concerned that it may continue. And if it does, we won't hit the deadlines. And that makes me uncomfortable.
Okay.
And that's all. I'm just making the comment. I'm not asking for any feedback, but I think that may have been Commissioner Carter's concern as well.
I can definitely see where that concern comes from. I know that bringing Carla on has really been, necessary, and we've talked in the agenda setting meetings and stuff, and so Eileen and I have had a chance to get to know a little bit about her, how she thinks, and I definitely had the same concern as you. I still have concern about the timeline, but I do feel better getting to know her a little bit. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, my
Crit-
comment wasn't about the
Right,
status today.
right.
It's kind of the overall process.
Yeah.
And the team looks like it's stable and in place, but accidents happen, illnesses occur, things,
Right.
the bridge closes. And
Right.
maybe people can't get here to do this job.
Yeah.
So I'm just expressing that. I'm about where Jeff was.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
About where Jeff was when he had his concern.
Okay. Yes.
From what I've seen from the start, when we began this and SCJ did their presentation, to where we are right now, and what I've seen from the last couple meetings, I think what they have put together as far as Carla and the new people on board, and then bringing in some technical people, having it all in-house, I think will go a lot faster than SCJ from what we saw, because we didn't see much movement other than a couple of meetings with them and then nothing. So I think we're getting a lot more concentrated attention to the plan with the approach they're taking now. And it was a concern 3 months ago, but I think they've got it on track. I understand that the bridge may close, but we also have Zoom and phones. So I think they have accounted for contingency, I hope. But, she could get hit by a bus tomorrow, God forbid. It could happen. And somebody will have to step up then.
And if I may, Commission, we're very aware and sensitive to what I refer to as trust building, right? We truly are, and we are not taking that lightly. And so I appreciate your comment and verbalizing that. And if I could be so bold as to just ask you to trust us a little bit and see where we are. And because what I'm hoping tonight is that you have a great exercise with this. I had mentioned to Carla that you had driven around the city. What you just told me, and she was very excited to have those types of conversations with the commission, because it will be very informative into how she drafts and writes the various narratives associated with the comprehensive plan. And then the only other thing that I would say is that please feel free to come and talk to me. And, if you have these concerns, and this goes to all of you, right? If you have concerns about this, I talk to Julianne and Eileen quite a bit. They hear some things that, don't necessarily need to be on the public record. But in all sincerity, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, schedule a meeting. Carla and I can attend it together. You can have it with just me, whatever that looks like. But we are happy to have conversations with you individually and do what we can to build and repair that trust.
Thank you. And, for my own part, I mean, I like the plan that you've put together. I think that it's going to be a lot of work to hit all these marks on this time frame. I think that we can, and I'm optimistic. But if I feel like we're falling behind or I start to get concerned, I definitely will vocalize it to you. Anything else? Okay.
The only other thing that I will add is that in the instance of not having a commission meeting because the technical work is still being done. I am happy to send the commission out with an email update of where we are and what is happening and why there is a delay. So that way you know that there is still work being done, because there is a significant amount of technical work that still needs to be done, which is why I made the reference that about the commitment from the city manager and the finance director about pulling in additional technical consultants if need be. So I'm absolutely happy to do that to the commission if that would help.
Okay, thank you. I know that sometimes, we have had meetings, not recently, but we have had meetings that ended up being, 3.5 hour meetings because there was so much to go over. Is there an option if like, that, hey, this is going to take us, this is going to be a lot. Is there an option to start the meeting early or do like a work session from 4 to 5:30? And then, I know that we have done a public work session before and then started a regular meeting.
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
Can do it all. Yeah, you
Okay.
might have seen in the schedule, we have a all-day Saturday meeting. I apologize, I didn't say, kind of preface it, especially on that part from February on. These are some dates that are the dates we want to hit. Between those can be very fluid. It's if Planning Commission needs to meet more than what we have programmed in, we're going to meet more. If Planning Commission is, by that time, you'll have at least seen all of the chapters. If you're like, feel all right, see the draft, we're okay with the schedule, we're going to do that. And that's the same going to go for City Council. We're trying to reach this June 29th date in order to preserve the ability to not have 1 point taken from grant applications. We talked about that at the last meeting. We've met with the Public Works Director and the City Manager about what implications are, done an analysis of it. As long as we have a comp plan adopted by the end of June, there will be no adverse consequences. So this Public Works Director is very, very comfortable with it. So again, whatever we need to do, whatever you feel comfortable doing, whatever you need, we're definitely going to do it.
Okay, thank you. Does the commission have any other comments or questions on the proposed draft schedule? Okay. Looks good.
Right?
Okay, our next agenda item is future land use map. And I'm going to get to that part here. Do we have somebody that would like to speak to that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and introduce it and propose an approach for our tonight's discussion. So one of the things that we started internally at the staff level once we began our weekly comprehensive plan update meetings is the first thing to look at was the future land use map. And again, because it was not going to be a dusting off, and also because it would help me understand kind of the lay of the land, literally, is to have the planning staff go through the future land use map with me. And we did a SWOT exercise similar to what we're going to do tonight, where we talked about the strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats of each of the land use designations. And what came out of that is what's represented in your staff memo, which is at the end, which is a table that walks through each of the land use designations on the future land use map. And we put in the purpose of that as articulated in the zoning ordinance, and then the comments and questions that the planning staff had. And this, of course, is based on their experience with this map every day, talking to property owners, talking to the public, talking to developers about each of those land use designations, and questions and thoughts that they had as professional planners. The I'm going to use the term land use designation because that is the term for the map that lives in the comprehensive plan. But with it also comes the zoning map, and there is not too much difference to it, although there are some slight variations to it. So when we are going to talk about the slight variations to the zoning map, we will distinguish that. Otherwise, you can think of them as one and the same per our conversation. And so what I thought in your memo, there was on the second page, and by the way, I sort of chuckled that all your pages had 3-page numbers on it. So Emily and I are going to coordinate better so that when I got it, I was like, oh, okay. So I had my page numbers, and then the PDF had their page numbers, and then the packet had its page numbers. So anyway, page 2 of the memo had some questions regarding like the SOAR exercise, the strength, opportunity, aspiration, results. So those are some good questions, but they had some pre-meeting questions down there, and we're not going to, what I propose we do tonight is to follow the table. That is the next page after that, walk through each land use designation. I'd like Travis to introduce that designation, kind of its purpose and what his experience with it is and what his observations are to share with you. And then we can discuss each one of those. We see how far we get tonight walking through the table. Some of them I don't think need too much discussion. But certainly we are going to discuss whatever questions and discussion you'd like to have. I have a whiteboard here that I'll keep some notes on. Jax is taking notes. He's our scribe for the night. In addition, of course, as you know, Emily does the minutes. But what our hope for this exercise is to hear from you as the people's planners, what thoughts you've had on this map and what you've heard from the citizenry. And when projects and questions have come to you, if there were things that you thought about, you were curious about, or you had opinions about. And also I appreciate that, that you've taken the time to kind of drive around the city thinking about it maybe in a different way than you would as your normal course of routine and as a citizen, as a resident. Because when you step back and think of it as a planner, you do think about things slightly differently than you do as kind of just this is your home and you're going about your daily life. So I guess I'll pause there and see, does that approach sound acceptable to the Planning Commission as at least a way to kick off our conversation? Okay. That's great. So I will go through the 5 questions that we're not going to answer each one, but I do encourage you to be thinking about as we go through each of the land use categories, and they might spark your thoughts or questions that you might have about one. But where have you observed successful development or redevelopment that aligns with the current future land use map? And again, you can think of that as also zoning map. Are there areas where the flume and zoning map appear to be in conflict or out of sync with development goals? What areas of the city do you think are ready for new land use directions, such as higher density housing or different or expanded commercial activity? How should the flume respond to recent housing legislation and the need for a variety of housing types and more affordable housing options? Should we consider a new multifamily land use designation zoning? Should any existing designations be consolidated, refined, or removed to simplify the map and better guide implementation? And I think I'll just make a quick comment on that one, and then I'm going to set up Travis to introduce the first land use designation. Is that when you do have a number of land use designations and zoning districts, they all must be represented in the zoning ordinance, and they all must be represented in the zoning ordinance with a set of development standards. And the more you have and the more standards you have, the more difficult it is to administer, just to make sure that you know all of the standards. And so there is merit in keeping that in mind, because everything that's on that map translates into a set of regulations that lives in the zoning ordinance. So with that, we're going to go with the table, and Emily's put up the map for you guys to have in front of you, because we will be talking about all the things on there hopefully today. But if you have your table, the first land use designation is agricultural conservancy. So I will send it over to Travis to set us up for our discussion.
Yeah, so this is a zone that you probably wouldn't typically see in a urban city, but we've got one. We haven't had much inquiry on it for, development or changing or anything like that. So yeah, Emily, if you want to scroll. There you go. That's the only spot we've got it in. It's actually a split. It's a lot with a split zone on it. Like 80 or 70% of it or so is AG, with the rest of it being LDR. So it's, in its practical sense, it's probably fine leaving it the way that it is. And then if there's a developer or property owner that at some point wants to change that, then we could look at it at that time. So for now, we haven't really put much thought into changing that one for now, because it is very specific and kind of unique. So I guess unless you guys have any questions specifically about that, I was just going to move straight to, yeah, go ahead.
So is this one of those ideas where if we got rid of this designation, we don't have to describe it? It makes it more efficient? Because this is the only AG we have, right? And it's just like if we do away with the AG and rezone it, makes life simpler for the city?
Well, I guess if we were to remove it, or to propose removing it, we have to go through the process, so there could be public opinion that wants to keep it. So we do have to consider what the public's, I guess, feedback on it would be. What do you mean?
What's the existing land use?
It's vacant. I mean, there are in portions of it, I believe there on the portion that is where you can see that little green, I think it's a park indicator, but that's on a separate parcel there. We do have some city infrastructure. There are some city wells that are up in that area. So there may be some current concerns from Public Works just about like proximity to our infrastructure on that site. But those are, when we consider changes, that's where we are also have to consider what would be the public level of scrutiny or public feedback that we would get on it. So as it's not been one that we've had a lot of clamoring for developing or changing, it hasn't been one that we've really labeled as a priority for changing, at least not at this time. But if you guys are interested, we could do a little bit more due diligence on that and come back with more on it. So
Okay, we'll think about that.
Okay.
We'll keep going and
Okay.
then we'll circle back.
yeah. Okay. So the next one, I think, which we'll have a lot more to talk about, is the low density residential, which makes up, as you can see on the map, a good portion of our future land use map. And that translates on the current zoning map as R48. And so essentially in the comp plan, LDR is defined as 8 units per acre. And so we cannot exceed that. So any type of residential development that is newly developed in that area is capped at 8 units per acre. And so knowing that and knowing the restrictions that has, that's where the conversations come up of, do we want to consider certain portions of the LDR or certain areas of the LDR in the city to talk about multifamily, having maybe a higher medium density residential, because that is something that even with our new allowance for multiplexes, we still are restricted and confined by the density requirements. So even though that we've allowed attached residential, they're still restricted by that 4 to 8 units per acre. So there's not as much of an incentive for those developers. And we've been hearing it's like, well, if we can't actually maximize the density more, then what is really the point? We're just getting tighter buildings on bigger, more empty lots in that sense, right? So that's a question that we've got. So even like for things like cottage developments, you can do it through a planned residential development or a PRD currently, but it doesn't really get you I think it gets you to about 10 or 11 through having lots that are about 3,000 square feet. In terms of density, you can go up a little bit, but even still, it's not. We've had some reluctancy to even try for it because it's not as dense as they would like it to be. So those are conversations that, are there areas that you would prefer higher density residential rather, instead of maybe changing it across the board? Do we have more of a mix of keeping some that are currently LDR, and then others become more of like an MDR where we could maybe go to 10 to 16 or 10 to 14, whatever, seems appropriate, and consider the surrounding properties, of course, for development intensities in that sense. So one of the things that we've talked about is we have the ability to raise short plats from currently in code, it is 4 lots or fewer for a short plat, but we have the ability to take that up to 9. And so if we went up to 9 and allowed short plats up to 9, would it make sense for even the LDR that we keep as LDR to then be at least 9 units per acre? So even just a small change like that could provide some additional density. So there's lots of options that we can talk about, but I guess this is your opportunity to share your thoughts, because I mean, I have a few, but I think I've kind of shared them. But yeah, I would love to hear your guys' feedback. What do you see as the future for LDR or its successor?
Okay. Does anybody on the commission have any thoughts on that? Yes, Dennis.
They're not processed thoughts. They're just whatever. There's a lot of land in LDR,
I was thinking the same.
and at a density of 8 dwelling units per acre, that's going to fall short of our affordability goals that we're going to be looking at if we don't do anything. But what zone has the highest residential density possible? Not classification, but zone.
So the only one that has a density requirement is the LDR. So like the LD has, and I guess the LD and the CMU have an allowance for multifamily. And I guess without considering what would be needed for roads and things like that, there's no density requirement, but there's a cap on like obviously the size of the development or the structures that will be built, which inherently impacts density. But that would be kind of up for the developer to figure out and provide through plans. But there's the only zone that explicitly states what the density cap is the LDR.
Interesting. Okay. I have to think a little bit more about that one. Thank you.
Yes, Eileen.
So if we raised and allowed more development on acres, or raise the density, would that be attractive to developers or go too overwhelming for developers? Or
I think the feedback we've gotten is that, I mean, even with the most recent developments that we've approved, so the one along Bell Creek, the rain shadow development that was 30 or so, they are going basically as small as possible on their lots already. So they're running right up against the 5,400 square feet for the minimum lot size. So I think if we lowered that, they would absolutely follow suit. So I don't think it would be a problem for them. And they would probably welcome it based on, at least what we've seen, and knowing there's other developments that have, like I expressed, wanted to do cottages on a more densely like a more compact style of development. But because there was no ability to get a density incentive or bonus that was really attractive enough to make it pencil out, it just didn't work for them. So I think there's certainly a desire for it, but we wouldn't really know until we did it and watched the market bear out. So
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this one? I mean, I at a very basic level, I do think that this is one that we could really look at because there is so much of the land use that is designated as LDR. And I think that if we do want to hit our goals as far as providing more housing, this will be one section that we need to really look at. Yes, Larry.
I would just like us to maybe consider increasing the density where we know schools are going to be, where we
Mhm.
know that families are going to be. So wherever it comes out, if we're going to make it be more dense, maybe in those sections for sure.
Okay, and I do see that there are some future elementary school vicinities. Are those areas that schools,
Well,
if new schools are built, that's
yeah,
where
so
they'll
that
be?
was and that was part of the previous comp plan. I think as Squim residents, we probably know the struggles that we face in trying to get funds for new schools, and we're probably more likely to see improvements to the existing campus as opposed to expansions to new schools. So I hear what you're saying, Larry. So, but in that area that is on this map, SCH for school, it is probably appropriate to have increased densities, like, and that's kind of the feedback we're looking for. Like, if we were going to consider it, where should we be considering it? Like, does it make sense south of the highway? Does it make sense kind of on that exterior arms of Washington? So that's kind of the feedback we're looking for. So if you've got any, we're open to it. I know we have our thoughts, but we'd like to hear yours. So
As a follow-up to Larry's comment, I mean, it's all infrastructure. Is the sewer capacity available? Is the water available? Those types of issues need to be looked at before we hypothetically just raise density in areas.
Okay. Anything else?
What's that? So with respect to the water and to the sewer, it is my understanding from Public Works that we do in fact have capacity for certainly for build out over the next 20 years. And then I think in terms of the capacity for increased density, I think it would probably be more along the lines of the conversation of what you're thinking about, right? Because if you are thinking of bumping it up to, and I'm picking random numbers. So let's say you decide to bump it up to 15, right? That might be a different story than if the Planning Commission said we wanted to bump it up to 25, right? That's certainly going to have a different impact on our capacity. But in terms of what we have right now, it is my understanding from Public Works that water and sewer for build out and including servicing all of our UGAs, we have capacity to do that.
Okay. Did you want to say something, Carla?
Yeah, I just thought I was seeing if somebody else wanted. I do think we would love to hear your thoughts on even taking the moderate step of raising from 4 to 9 to align with the 9-lot short plat.
Okay. Any thoughts on that? Yes.
Do it. Yeah, absolutely.
and I think Squim used to have 9-lot short plats, and then at some point it went down to 4. So we would just be, following suit with what we used to do and with what a lot of other jurisdictions in the state are doing. So
Okay.
There's almost every state, city has gone to 9 lots for short plat.
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah, and so that would leave that as an administrative review as well. It would keep it from needing to go to hearing examiner, so we could do that kind of in-house as well. There'd still be the requirement unless we raised that threshold as well, but I think that takes another step for if we wanted to exempt it from SEPA, because currently SEPA would require, it's still 4 units. If we go over 4 units, it's got to go through SEPA review. So that's maybe another consideration, but that's yeah. Anyway, okay, that sounds good.
Great.
Okay.
So just to clarify that, what we would bring forward is a 4 to 9 zoning density. And then as partnership with that would be an amendment to the subdivision ordinance to allow for 9-lot short plats.
Yeah, I'm in with that. Any Any other comments on that? No. How,
Because I already wrote the draft, so.
Yeah.
okay. So, so we have an overlay with a maximum of 18 feet.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up.
Is, I mean, is that, are you finding that to be restrictive?
Yeah, so a lot of that is already built out. So in the grand scheme of things, there's not a lot, and the LCA will probably give us more proof, right, of this, or at least more evidence that supports it, or data, however you want to phrase it. But most of that zone is kind of built out and kind of what we would almost consider like our historic downtown residential zones, right? They're the single family, single story homes that are very close proximity to our downtown. Like I said, most of them are pretty much built out. There's not a lot of, there would essentially be infill left in those areas. So while we could propose removing that, it would we run into the issue of, then you got 2-story buildings right there next to all these single stories. So it's definitely a thought, and we've talked about it and considered it also, but just kind of also keep that in mind that would it fit with its surrounding buildings? So yeah.
That map doesn't, so the overlay, I guess it's not on that one. I don't, but it's the hatched area there. And so one thing to think about is the 18 feet pretty much keeps everything at 1 story or 1.5 story. So if there might be opportunities for investment into existing homes where they want to add a second story, or perhaps, I'm just speculating here, if with the new ADU provisions, they could look at monitoring, modifying floor plans, and then by adding a second story, they could add an ADU maybe on the first story. I don't know. So Travis, have you had experience with people like wanting to go to 2 stories in that area and just not being able to?
Or it'd be in those infill instances, but there's been it's few and far between. Like, I can't recall the last person that I spoke to that was trying to do that. It was more for like accessory structures, right? So they wanted to build like a shop or a garage on the property with their house, and they weren't able to build it bigger than their house or taller than their house, and that was a problem. So not in the sense of new units necessarily, but with the ADUs and with the opportunity for unit lot subdivisions, which we have to consider, which is also going to be a new development standard. There is the perspective for more new growth in those areas in the very near future. So if it's something we want to take a look at and consider.
Do you know what the history of that 18-foot overlay is?
I want to say it's for view sheds, and because of, like I said, because of its historic proximity to downtown. I know I say that word and Christina gives me a look, right? But it's, where it is, what its proximity to downtown is, because most of it is already built out. I have to assume that it was put there so that new homes that are moving in don't come in and stick out like a sore thumb.
Part of it was the great big remodel, the people purchasing lots and then tearing down the old houses, the typical thing. And that back in, 10 years ago, they didn't want that happening because that was kind of a nationwide trend. So they put that in there also.
Thank you.
How do you feel about it today then? Because I was going to say, I've had that same exact experience in kind of traditional downtown residential, but it's unwound itself, that people actually prefer to have, as much as they might not want their neighbors to do things that they don't want, they still want to have the flexibility to do what they want on their property. So it has, any restrictions that happen kind of have unwound itself. So how do you feel about that, the 18-foot height limit right now? And it doesn't have to go to 35 feet or 30, like, even going to 25 feet would allow for a full second story.
And then it would be consistent with the rest of the LDR R48 zones that exist currently everywhere else. So
It's 25 feet, the height. Okay.
Yeah, I can understand that it works right now, but we're trying to put something together that is going to move us through, for years to come. And if we want to increase, housing, a second story, I mean, especially with multi-generational, housing, really becoming a thing that is very common in Europe, but it's not so much here. But in 10 years, there's going to be more multi-generational housing. So I say at least 25 feet allows for a full second story. I don't think that's unreasonable. Most, it's not uncommon to see a 2-story house. That's my opinion. Anybody else?
Anybody else? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It would be standard across. So the overlay on the zoning map would be taken off and the height limit would be consistent throughout all of LDR.
Okay.
Okay. So what we're seeing consensus on removing the 18-foot height limit on the zoning map in the zoning code. LDR. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on the LDR before we move on?
Nope. Well, not for me. Anybody else? Okay.
We will come back to
We
find
will
out.
come back to
Yeah,
it, yeah.
to find out where you want potentially more higher density zones if we want to include them. Okay, so the next one is our community mixed use zone, which is the purple on the map there. It used to just be the CB, which was community business, but with the multiplex addition to the LDR, it also provided multifamily in the what was previously CB, which is now the CMU. What this has now allowed for is essentially apartments in the community business, or what was formerly the community business zone. So now we have community retail uses, I believe transient lodging uses still allowed, as well as an allowance for multifamily in the form of apartments. We've had one application for an apartment in that zone since its adoption, which is, I think that's a positive to see that there has at least been a desire to do it. We've had at least some more inquiries about some of the vacant properties that are in that zone for that potential type of use also. While it hasn't necessarily bore out yet, it's at least encouraging to be having those conversations because it is still relatively new, that change. Even if it's just been within the last couple of years, it's good to know that people are interested. So what we've got for a question on the table was, do we want to, there's no barriers noted, but do we want to consider expanding it between like 5th and 7th Streets to support more of a walkability? So as you can see, that would be on the west side of the map there, kind of just south of, let's say, Safeway. There's a lot of larger either apartment buildings that currently exist. There's a nursing, or I think it's the rehab center. So there are already some large structures in that area. And so would it be appropriate to consider just kind of, in a sense, dragging the CMU down to allow, because there are some larger sized vacant parcels that are also in that area as well. And instead of requiring it to either be multiplexes or single family, do we allow looking at having apartments be able to be proposed there? Now, I will couple that with the fact that directly across from 5th is that 18-foot height restricted zone that is single family currently. So, just as we look to remove that, that kind of removes that, I guess, barrier, if you will, that, you've got this really low height zone directly adjacent, something that could be proposed as, higher density and larger structures. So I just wanted to point that out, but is that something that we want to consider? Because like I said, there is some vacant land in there that could lend itself to apartment buildings potentially.
Or do you kind of know?
Do we have a pointer? That might be easier than.
Yeah, not the best. Yeah, a pointer for the screen. You could use your mouse, I guess.
Somebody's moving.
You dropped it. Drop it again. It'll work.
Okay. You
Oh,
could
wait.
use Emily's mouse and
It was turned off.
oh, there you go.
Okay, so yeah, we're looking kind of in, I don't need to walk around anymore, but it is kind of just in this area. There are some vacant parcels. There is a single family development right here that would kind of be sandwiched between those vacant parcels. But there is what we believe to be an opportunity to just essentially drag this down, and it could stop even right there at that street there. So
Street.
oh, what is that? It's either, I believe it's either Hammond or Hemlock. Hemlock. So yeah, oh, that's actually really helpful because you can kind of see there's the street network for this single family subdivision. And you can kind of, there's the rehab center right there. You can kind of see the faint outline of it. We do have an approved subdivision here. It'll expire in 2027. It's just preliminary plat. That is actually somebody who wanted to do cottages on a more dense piece of property, but wasn't able to. So they just did what they could, and it's now unfortunately for sale. So it's not going to happen the way it got approved. I did talk to somebody who's looking at buying it today, though. So, but yeah, so does anybody want to talk about that potentially as an option? The other one that I think about is if you zoom out, Emily, and this is kind of off cuff a little bit, but the other one that I think about is when I'm in this area, if I'm driving down to the park and you're looking east along East Washington, you can really, it's just kind of wide open in this area. And knowing that Washington is one of our main thoroughfares, what's our appetite? And we'll get to the HTLI later, but what's our appetite for even potentially expanding it along the Washington corridor as well? So those are the two that I see as possibilities, but open to hear your thoughts.
Yes, Dennis?
Just a simple question. Does the rehab center fall into the intent of the CMU designation?
I'd have to take a look at like if we would consider that more transient, because I don't believe it's permanent stays. It's more they're there, and I think then they leave. They may be there for a few days or so. So could we consider that transient in order to keep it from being non-conforming?
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think that's where it may fall is as a non-conforming use.
Okay.
And I know that there's actually a Serenity House kind of apartment building in that area as well. And they've reached out actually to try and expand, but because of the R48 restriction, they actually exceed it already. And so they can't even really improve it, or they can kind of repair in place and maintain as it is without being able to improve or expand the services that they provide. So there is that as well.
Okay. Larry?
I think more multifamily is consistent with what we heard from the community. It's consistent with what we have to do. I like the areas you picked out, even the one that you're going to talk about later.
Mhm.
So I'm a big proponent of expanding our opportunity to do multifamily.
Yeah, Eileen?
And I totally agree. And I think the areas that you pointed out are, good accessibility to downtown, and it would just be a good opportunity for developers and for us, I think.
Okay, Larry?
One more thing, there's a couple of like little splotches of purple.
Yeah, like so.
And I'm assuming that is like legacy zoning.
Yeah, so I believe one of them is the museum, and the other is what is now Paradise Restaurant.
So is there an opportunity, because again, that can be multifamily
Mhm.
as well as other things. Is there opportunity, because I think that's Squim Avenue and it is around the school.
Mhm.
Could you guys look at maybe expanding around the school this purple stuff?
Yeah. So, and I guess the big areas we'd want to, I guess, we would need to focus on would be in here, because currently the LD would allow for multifamily as in its current form, and we are seeing, as I'm sure you've seen, the eightplex building that's going up on Hendrickson. There's there's 2 5 units of similar design that are going in at what is known as the Thompson PUD, that's accessed off of Fifth, that's also in the LD zone. So and we'll get to the LD as well, but though that it is allowing for that right now. So I think you're exactly right. I think there is an opportunity potentially to expand even this to be either whether we expand it as lifestyle, or the downtown, but leaving it as LDR sandwiched between all of these higher densities maybe doesn't make as much sense. So.
Okay. Any input on that? I mean, I like your idea of expanding that zone if it makes it more versatile.
Are there any uses you guys are afraid of in that zone? And I only ask that because historically there are things like storage units. Mini storage is one that in current standards could be interpreted to be allowed in the zone in its today's form. But are there uses, because it is a CMU, so there's obviously a commercial element to it. Are there specific uses you'd like to see restricted, or is it just keep what we've already got and just expand it?
Well, the last sentence in your stated purpose is each development is a good neighbor to adjacent uses and districts, particularly single family neighborhoods. So there is emphasis that
It should fit. Yeah.
it should fit.
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, is that, so for instance, if somebody wanted to put a gentleman's club in there next to the neighborhood,
and I think we have some standards for that in particular, and I don't think it's allowed anywhere.
Okay.
I think it's prohibited
like
everywhere.
a nightclub, you
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
A nightclub right next to, or something that doesn't fit. How would we manage that? I mean, I'm just throwing that out there as like a completely exaggerated example. But my point is you never know if it.
Yeah, just for, I guess, to an example of that, not necessarily in the CMU, but like in the neighborhood business, it's required that you get a conditional use permit for bars and taverns. So if there are certain things that you'd like, maybe some more further review on, or extra added conditions where they have to meet certain requirements that maybe other things don't, then those are things we can consider when adopting development standards for the zone.
Okay. Anything else on that? Okay.
Again, just to clarify, or just a confirmation, consensus on expanding the CMU in the areas that Travis pointed out.
Yeah, and potentially more.
And potentially more.
If we need to, but we have to do something if we're going to make what the public is asking for in the comprehensive plan. If we are honoring their wishes, we've got to loosen up our belts a little bit on some of this stuff. Okay.
All
Great,
right.
thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, so we will move to now the red area, which is comprised of 3 zones. It is our downtown core DMU, which is downtown mixed use 1 and downtown mixed use 2. The essential premise of them is that all uses are allowed except for those that we have explicitly prohibited. So there's a list of uses in, I believe it's 1857, that it does go into prohibit. One of of them being, I believe, adult gentlemen's clubs. But the what we've identified is, there's probably not a lot that we would want to change in these zones. It's our, these are our walkable retail. It's our restaurants. It's the core of kind of what makes Squim. And so we've talked about a number of things in past meetings, height limits. I think one of Carla's very first meetings was talking about height, and it was a surprise to learn that there's already height limits that far exceed the buildings that are present there today. So there's maybe not even a need to go up on the height limits as we had heard from the public, because there's already the allowance for it. It's just there's, in order to do it would take a lot more to tear down the buildings that exist and build them back up. And adding on to them may not be as cost effective as one would think. So the height limits don't seem to be an issue. At least it didn't seem to be an issue the last time we talked about it. Some feedback we got from the community was issues around parking. We've heard both that there's not enough parking and that there's too much parking. So it just kind of depends on who you talk to. But in terms of new development, would parking requirements be an issue? I know that there's lots of state conversations about doing away with parking requirements, and what would that mean for Squim? And so those are just things that we want to consider, because parking is important in a walkable, downtown friendly area where most of the people coming have to drive to it, right? So in that sense, we can't do away with it entirely, but is it something we want to talk about? And then additionally, there's not a whole lot that's actually what would be considered vacant, except for like this area right where the DD is, which comes off of Center Parkway, which is the area you guys probably all know that Security Services owns. That's where they do their Unity of Effort event. So, and they own a good portion of that. So I don't know if they have any future desire to develop, or at least not any in the immediate future. So with that being really the only major vacant area, we have not really proposed or talked much about changes to it other than a consolidation of DMU1 and DMU2, because it appears that the only difference is that I believe it's DMU2 allows for outdoor storage, and that's it. That is the single difference between those two zones. And so it's like, if that's the only difference, we could just very easily smash those two together and just have it be one zone. So, and then but that bears the question, do you want outdoor storage to remain a use in the downtown districts, or is that something you just get rid of when we consolidate those two? And it would make Thomas Lumber non-conforming. So there is that. That seems to be the only property that is utilizing that designate or that land use. And I have to assume that it was probably done that way to keep them from being non-conforming. I can't confirm that, but just based on the build out and everything, it just appears that that's maybe the case. So.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
Once upon a time, there was a talk about a sub-area plan. Was that ever developed and adopted, and is that in use, and how does that play into the downtown district?
That's a good question, and I don't think it's on here, but I think Carla has proposed that.
I noted it in the table because I don't know the answer to that. I've asked that question, so.
Yeah, we, for whatever it's worth, Leland, one of the folks we talked to from Leland Consulting, says that he worked on the original or the downtown plan from back in about 2010 or whenever it was. So if we bring them on, he's got some history of it. But yeah, there is and I've seen the downtown plan, and the way that it got put into the code seems to just be this 1857 downtown districts. We've got development standards, design standards that are different in that area. But it is more of kind of an aesthetics thing than anything else. Wider sidewalks, to go with the walkability. So there is a downtown standard that applies to all of the DD zones. But as far as like, because I think at one point it talked about trying to get like a movie theater in Squim and different things like that. And yeah, none of that has obviously transpired. So
I do think that, I mean, it would be important to know if you as the planning commissioners felt that there should be an update to the sub-area plan. If you do feel that way, I would suggest we should do it after June 29th of next year, which we certainly can, do sub-area plans afterwards. But from what Travis just said, like I've heard about this downtown plan. It's sitting on a shelf in the office. I haven't cracked it open, but practically it's being implemented through the zoning ordinance anyway as those development standards. So unless there was something special that needed to happen in a sub-area plan, the zoning ordinance is still a very appropriate place to do your development standards for downtown. And then I had just a personal question, or one of my questions was, did you, in the downtown core, which I know doesn't show up here, but what's the building height in downtown, 45 feet? Yeah, I mean, I feel like just knowing from some of, listening to since my time here, that 45 feet feels like that might be too high for the downtown core, and that actually might merit going to 35 feet, which would be a
38 is what it is in the DMU 1 and 2 if we wanted to just make it consistent across the three.
There we go. So thank you. So right now what we have is a downtown core at 45 feet and DMU 1 and 2 at 38 feet. And so I mean, I would propose lowering the height for your downtown, because it will only take 1 4 to 4.5 story building in your downtown to change a lot, to change the feel of it. So it's, again, I think this is a good question to consider. It does take, in order to build a new building, it's not going to be stories added to existing structures. It's going to be taking down a structure and building a new building. It would have residential on the, upper floors. And is that, I know through the growth scenario exercises that were done last year, that was one of the discussions, was could you use downtown as a way to meet kind of some of your multifamily needs? I think there are other zoning opportunities, and, this is just something that downtowns like Squims are being changed all over the country. So how do you feel and what do you think about the future of your downtown? 45 feet is 4 stories.
Okay. Anything on that? Eileen?
Yeah, I like the recommendation of lowering the heights for downtown. And I like the idea of consolidating the mixed use for
The downtown mixed use.
Yeah, and storage. I don't know. One person's the only person doing it. It's really not an issue, and it would be an issue if we said that's a problem. So I don't think we want to do that, but I think more consolidation and keeping the town at 3 stories, I think would be good.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Is that a consensus or should we come back and do you guys need time to think about that? Or was there a consensus on having a standard 38 feet for all of the downtown?
I'm all for standardizing, so it doesn't make any sense to have 45 feet and across the street 38 feet. And to me, I think we like the recommendation, and you didn't get any opposition, but are you looking for like a vote?
Nope. That's fine.
If you would just say, yeah.
If you don't,
I'm
okay.
only one, but
Yeah, and
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Honestly, the bulk of what the issues that we run into are more in the more neighborhood oriented portions of the zone, where somebody's trying to build a single family house and the standards for the downtown are clearly for commercial. But if they don't opt to use infill standards because for whatever reason they don't like the design requirements that are built into infill standards, then they have to. So like we had a house basically built with because of the setback requirements in the DMU, they had to build a house that has a driveway that basically you can't park in. And so they're like, well, can we just step this back? And it's like, well, no, you opted to use the development standards for the zone as opposed to infill standards. So you are now restricting yourself in that sense. So this doesn't have to be a conversation for today, but just as I am looking at development standards, I may look at having different development standards for different types of uses that are potentially proposed. So instead of having a standardized development standard across for the zone, there may, because we do still allow single family residential in there, maybe having at least a specific development standard for that or requiring them to follow infill. So that's just something that I wanted to at least point out, because that is kind of one of the issues we run into, is trying to fit a square peg in a round hole when we have standardized development standards for a zone that really maybe it wasn't intended for a certain type of use. So.
Okay. I mean, I'm not opposed to lowering the height, because one of the things that was important in our public comment was that people really wanted to keep the feel of downtown, of like a small town. They wanted to preserve the integrity of a small town, which I think that's in line with it, and there's other opportunities to build out. The one question that I had, and I'm not 100% sure if this falls under land use or under zoning, but it's something to kind of consider. And this is like a personal experience. I owned a home for a long time in the downtown district. I mean, it was like on the next block. And when I went to sell my home, and this was like 8 or 9 years ago, the people that wanted to purchase it, the bank would not, even though they were, qualified for a loan, but the bank would not give them a residential loan on the home, because if for some reason the house burned down or was destroyed, they were required to rebuild it as commercial. And so the bank said, we're not going to give you a residential loan for 30 years if we can't guarantee that it's going to stay a resident. And so they went back and then they reworked the loan to be a commercial loan, because they had a business and wanted to move to Sequim. And the bank said, we're not going to give you a commercial loan because currently it is a resident. It's used as a resident right now. And so they were not able to purchase. And I had to get a cash buyer. So is that, I mean, I'm concerned because I know that there are a lot of homes in this area.
Yeah.
And there's people that would want to keep that home. And then, or for instance, if they say, hey, I want to use this for a business, and then they go to sell. I mean, how restrictive is it that somebody can't say, oh, I would love to purchase this that's still essentially a home, but being used as a business, and turn it back into a home? I mean, is that part of land use, or is that part of?
Yeah, I'm not going to say that the bank was wrong, but the bank was wrong because it could absolutely be rebuilt as a residential home. That's single family is an allowed use in the zone.
Okay.
So like, if they needed to call us to confirm, we could let them.
Did.
Okay, yeah.
And so, and I mean, this was a long time ago, so who knows? But I mean, I didn't even know if that was still relevant. But when you're talking about development,
I mean, it's
in
issues.
the downtown district.
It's definitely issues that come up with financing for new developments and things where there are certainly issues for certain types of what's allowed, what's not, and what types of loans they'll give out. Granted, we are not necessarily involved in that as other than
Right.
what's allowed. But yeah, I would suggest the bank calls us next time.
I think they did. And
Okay.
again, I mean, this was before you were
sure.
here and you know what I mean? And it was before I was involved in any kind of city government.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't, I guess I'm just bringing that up because, you know, if we did have things in place that were restrictive like that, you know, that doesn't really lend the hand to development.
Right.
You
No,
know,
I
either.
totally agree.
So, okay, so that's irrelevant.
Yeah, I would
Move
hope
on.
that wouldn't be a problem, but you know, if it is, I would for the record suggest anybody reach out to the city because we would be happy to provide a zoning verification letter or whatever it might be that could be the official document that hopefully helps them in
Right.
time of need.
Okay.
So Emily loves those.
I'm sure she did.
Okay, anything else on the downtown districts before we move on? All right, the next one is regional commercial. So Emily, if you want to zoom out and go over to Costco's area, neck of the woods. Okay, so my notes are that this has been adequately utilized to date. You know, in its intent and adoption, we've seen the development that I think we expected there. There are some vacant properties that still exist, and so really the question that I have is, do we want to consider like high density residential as a potential use in the zone? I mean, we've got the vintage that's there that would essentially be that today. You know, there's the opportunity for structures like hotels that would essentially in appearance look the same as an apartment building. You know, its proximity to Washington and those types of uses, Walmart, you know, it's just something that the zone is pretty solid the way that it is, and the uses that are there and that are established aren't probably going anywhere anytime soon. Although there is the one vacant spot in the village center where Spirit Halloween pops up every year, but that's really the only one that seems to rotate. Other than that, it's pretty consistent. So do we want to entertain the opportunity for maybe residential there? And you know, there's future annexations on the horizon potentially for this area that I'm highlighting. Those property owners have at least come in to talk to us. In its current state, if that were to happen, it would go to LDR the way the code is written. But I'd have to defer to Carla on how we would address a UGA land use designation. But is that something that maybe lends itself more to either the LD here or the RC here, as opposed to what we now see as single family residential? It's right across the street from Walmart and is adjacent to this vacant property along Brackett, and then also next to the Vintage. And I should say the Vintage is actually here looks like in the LD. So it's in the right zone. But as far as proximity to similar uses, it would all kind of fit if we wanted to consider that. So we don't have to, but I just wanted to propose that and see if anybody had any thoughts.
Yes.
Surprised I have a thought. So one of the things that we did here is providing places for businesses to create employment. And I think we have opportunities for higher density housing elsewhere.
Okay.
And I don't know how the rest of the commission feels about it, but I think that's one of the things that I think you could expand that for more that kind of business. So like a hotel, yes. But to put in apartment buildings there, I think we could do that elsewhere.
Perfect.
That's just my thought.
Perfect. And I guess in that, is there any desire to expand the RC to allow for more large box or big box retail? And if so, what would be appropriate? Because do we want to see it on the other end of Washington, or do we kind of leave it in this confined area and just look at maybe absorbing some of the surrounding properties?
So I like whatever the highway department did right here with that off ramp for River Road. I think this is the ideal place, honestly, for that kind of stuff. But that's just, again, one person's opinion.
Eileen?
Another person's opinion. If we have places of work, people need to live nearby. A lot of those folks that are working minimum wage and could, either ride transit or walk. And so I think some investment should be looked at for housing for folks nearby, the big box stores that employ a lot of people.
So you have that one vacant lot that's kind of in between the auto
Mhm.
part store and then the vintage right there.
Yep. So these guys right here.
Yep.
Yep.
You want yeah. So could somebody put something in that's commercial plus residential? Like
Not today.
not today. Okay. Have you had any interest on anything?
Well, the only interest, or I guess active things we have, is there is a dental office that went through design review and I believe is approved right here in this portion of this lot.
Okay.
It's a kind of a one-off right now, they opted not to go through like a binding site plan process because as of now, that's the only plan that they've really got. And so until they decide to do more, that's currently what's been approved there. There have been talks about a hotel and maybe a strip mall along that same area. There was at one point, I believe, a binding site plan that was at least approved, but then nothing ever materialized, and so it then expired. And so the same property owner, I believe, still owns it, but nothing's come in or been expressed to us other than potentially a hotel. But those are just one-off phone calls where it's like, what would the parking requirements be for something like that? And that's where that goes. So, yeah, so no, I guess to answer your question, not much.
Okay. Any more thoughts on that?
What about expanding it out towards the area on the other side of town?
Where the other interchange may someday exist.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's and that's kind of why I bring that up, is if we're going to have two fully functioning interchanges on either side of the city, if it's not full on RC necessarily, do we at least look at intensifying the commercial uses there? So that's why I proposed potentially expanding the CMU to that area. But if we wanted it to be more commercial oriented, then maybe the RC is more appropriate. So. Oh yeah, Emily, you want to zoom out and just so we can see the full. Right. So. Right. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are some, there's a hotel, and I believe those are currently in this small little HC zone, which is one that you could see expanded as well because it is more auto oriented if the interchange does come to fruition. But if we wanted it to be more intense, maybe than HC, because we'll talk about HC as well, then yeah, I think those are absolutely considerations and conversations we need to have, because if we miss the opportunity or leave it the way that it currently is, you're going to have a bunch of essentially low density residential developments right on the interchange, which doesn't make a whole lot of good sense.
Okay.
And I believe, Christina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we are hoping that that happens in the next 5 years. I don't think there's anything set in stone or written down anywhere, but an interchange plan. Yeah, I know. I'm not putting you on the spot. But it would be before the next comp plan update would be my assumption.
So I actually have heard some very sad news. Yeah, I know. Way to jinx it, Travis. That the work that our city lobbyist and our past public works director, David Garlington, had conducted a significant amount of work and lobbying to try to get something going. Part of for the Simdars, the other leg of the Simdars interchange, and one of the issues was a bypass road. It is my understanding that the bypass road is no longer being considered by WASDOT. And I hope I'm not getting my wires crossed, but it sounds like that WASDOT has now pushed out the funding for design phase associated with that interchange, I think out to 2030.
Okay.
Or something. So it's
I heard it's at least 5 years.
Yeah, and yeah.
So
at least 5 years.
Okay. So maybe by the time we're doing our next update, but if it's something you want to consider, there is still an off ramp and an on ramp there, not a full one, but if it is something you want to consider, that it does, the next time you're staring down East Washington, just try to envision maybe what it could be. And does it make sense to have more single family developments right there off of Washington, or would you rather see some sort of mixed use or commercial uses? So.
Okay. I'd probably lean more towards commercial mixed uses than actually like, the regional commercial. That's where I'm leaning right now.
Okay.
But
so kind of like we talked about with maybe just an expansion of the existing CMU zone.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not 100% sure. I can't really give you a definitive,
Sure.
like, this
And
is how I feel.
You don't have to. That's fine. That's why we're just having a conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anything else on the RC before we move on?
I don't think so.
All right. So the next one is rather unique. So this one was part of I'll call it the HOVE study, the economic opportunity areas. And I believe it was done, and you can, pan over so we can see them both. Perfect. So there was, I believe, a market study done for these properties when these zones were established, and happy to share that, at least for this one. I know for sure there was one done on this one. But the uses here are certainly mixed. We've had some issues with the Bell Creek one. Obviously, Bell Creek itself is an issue to development, as there's buffers and things that you have to consider for avoiding. So the actual size of what's developable here is not exactly as it maybe appears. And then we've got Gary Oaks up in this corner here. So there's a good portion of that site that would have to be left either undisturbed or would need significant mitigation for. Barry did write an administrative interpretation before he left to do standalone residential in that zone. The problem is there's still a minimum requirement for 55% commercial uses. And everybody we've talked to has basically said, how can we require 55% commercial minimum when the market is more just for housing? So there's nothing in an application form yet, but we have had a pre-app for a master plan for that zone, which would essentially kind of for lack of better terms, modify the standards to be more allowing for what they want to do. And they are proposing more of a mixed use that would be more heavily centered on residential, potentially senior units and things like that. So there are some just zoning standards that kind of restrict at least that one. The River Road properties, I kind of refer to this one as like the snake. And so the body of the snake here is almost entirely owned by the tribe. It's where the MAT clinic and the 16-bed inpatient facility is. And so those will probably comprise of what will become more of a campus-like area for the tribe and whatever their future plans are, which they haven't shared with us. They don't have to. We've asked, but they probably have a plan for it as they've gone through and acquired a lot of the properties there. There was some retail interest in what is I refer to as like the head of the snake. And the downside of the current zoning standards for it is that any one retail use is limited to a maximum of 25% of the structure. So if a big box retail store wanted to come in and move into that facility, they'd need to be able to somehow provide 75% of their structure as different uses or different commercial entities. So even though it's directly across the street from Costco and other big box stores, it is almost saying this needs to be a strip mall. And while there are allowances for mixed use and residential, is that one that we would potentially entertain as maybe seeing what the property owners would consider would they be opposed to it being maybe rezoned as RC? And then it becomes an RC zone that we now have made available for a potential future big box store. Or do we want to leave it as EOA with more of a mixed use, but take a look at development standards that would maybe lessen the requirements for only being capped to 25% for each independent use within a structure to allow that maybe to go up. So they only had to provide, say, 20% more of a different structure, whereas they could be 80% of the building. So there's definitely been inquiries for these zones, but the way that the zoning standards are currently set up is definitely been a barrier for development. And so that's entirely why the Bell Creek EOA is being pursued through potentially a master plan so that they can, kind of define their own standards and get around it. So open to suggestions. And kind of just what you think about the zones in their current state, and maybe what you would like to see. So,
Well, yes, Dennis, go ahead.
What are the ramifications for us to change that designation from economic opportunity area? I mean, is there any state or guidance that we would have to abide by?
Yeah. So, and I want to say that these were adopted back when economic opportunity
zones.
Yeah, was pushed by the state. Hence, I think why the studies were done. So that would definitely be something we'd want to look at, and it can absolutely come back with more information and details on that. But we're just kind of trying to is there even an appetite for it for us to even consider it? Otherwise, we can just leave it as is, and then just work on development standards that would, essentially loosen the restrictions. So.
Okay, anybody else? Eileen?
I'm some of these are so close.
Yeah.
They're overlapping. Why do we have so many different titles on things that are so similar?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. That's a great question. I mean, and to be honest, the Bell Creek one has an emphasis more on like warehouse and industrial, which I don't know about you, but as like the gateway to the city doesn't, to me, scream like the most aesthetically pleasing thing to see when you first drive into Squim, right? And so if the overarching emphasis is more mixed use, but it needs to be commercial, and the allowance or the permitted uses here are more warehousing and industrial, does that really align with what we want to see when we first come into Squim? I mean, that makes honestly more sense over here with the big box stores, if we're being totally, like, if I were to give my opinion on that, it would fit in better. But I didn't write the standards back when these were established. So, you know, and
But, I mean, clearly, any development that's been done as far as warehouse and stuff over the last 10 years has been done in Carlsberg. So for whatever reason, that's more attractive
Yep.
Right.
than here. I
Yep.
mean, I like the idea. I really like the idea of that zone, being so diversified. But when you do something like you say, well, you can only, 25%, commercial. Well, what do you, that's
what are we
pretty-
expecting to
that's
get?
pretty
right?
restrictive.
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, if somebody could do 75% commercial and then have, like 3 or 4 residents, on the top floor, they're probably more likely to develop, I don't know. I'm going way into the weeds with my thoughts right now, but I feel I think it's a great zone. I think it's great. Or land use. I mean, I think it's written nicely with what you have, but I do think that it is kind of restrictive. And that's probably why it's still
It's
vacant.
still vacant. Yeah. Yeah. It's based. Yeah. And, the tribe has taken its opportunity to purchase a lot of these because nothing has been developed. Right. And
Right.
so it's attractive for them because they can keep all of their stuff in close proximity, which I totally understand. And
Right.
they'll make it really beautiful in that area, and all their development looks nice. But is there an opportunity for other things to go in as well? And it sounds like maybe just taking a look at the zoning standards and the restrictiveness of and how they're currently being applied is maybe what we can at least more easily do. But we wanted to at least see, do we want to consider rezoning them? And I think, to Dennis's point, we'll need to definitely look to see like how they were established, why they were established, and if there are any, requirements for us to have them or keep them the way that they are.
So Travis, what are your thoughts on then doing the Bell maybe? So let's just assume for a moment that we have full flexibility on the zoning. What about the Bell Creek EOA expanding the CMU land use designation to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess my short answer would be we could probably do it through just the zoning standards without having to necessarily change the label. And we could even allow potentially more uses in it if we wanted to consider that. But I think we would need to really take a refined look at what we want there. I mean, if industrial warehouse is not at all anything you want to consider there, then maybe CMU is more appropriate, and just having community retail and those things. But if we want it is one of the largest vacant properties left in Squim. So do we want to confine it to more of a community retail type use for commercial, or do we want to at least leave the opportunity for maybe the DD that's accessed through Center Parkway, and that to still have the ability to have more commercial uses essentially than what the current CMU allows. And we could also add more uses to the CMU too.
Right. Okay, so you've met a couple times with with a representative for the property owner for Bell Creek. What is it that they want to do there through the master plan?
So it is, and I'm recalling just off memory, it's about 300 units, whether mixed or attached, detached, kind of intermittently. There's about 100 or so senior units proposed, and then I want to say about 50,000 square feet of commercial space. So it's definitely a mixed use development. It would extend the I believe it's Hammond or Hemlock, whichever one goes through there. It would kind of meander through the property and then eventually connect back with Brown. So we would get, our east-west connection that way. That would really potentially even open up those downtown district properties or the remainder of that EOA for future development. So or encourage the folks that are in what is currently the Palmco Business Park, which is this like triangular area right here in the CMU that is relatively vacant still. Maybe that becomes a more enticing piece of property to get developed after that east-west connection opens it up and there's a more direct access to the interchange. So like getting the master plan would certainly, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, and sorry, Larry, I don't mean to, but I mean, they're getting a master plan because they don't like the standards.
Yes.
So we can think about rezoning it to to CMU where then they wouldn't need a master plan. That was
Right.
my only thought. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think Karen had something she wanted to say. She's been waiting.
I was just going to say what you've just said. I think both ways, expanding it, but also taking and refining what you have seen are some of the flaws with the EOA. If it's limiting what can be developed in there, and you can broaden it a little more and accommodate some of the uses that we can't get with some of the other zones, that would be the purpose for maintaining the zone. Otherwise, just obliterate the zone if it's a hindrance to development and utilize your RCs and your CMUs. But it just sounds like we're stopping a good idea. We want the house.
I mean, there's been a lot of
apartments.
There's been a lot of historic proposals I've seen for that EOA zone, from Fred Meyer to potentially Western to, different ones. And this is maybe even predating when it was EOA, but that property has seen its fair share of development ideas that just haven't. I'm sure Dennis probably saw some in his time. So like there have been proposals that just for whatever reason have not come to fruition. So
Larry, did you have something to say?
So time is of the essence what we're doing. My vague recollection, the opportunity zones were set up for a specific purpose, and property owners really wanted it because it provided tax advantages to them. So if you start running into like, it's going to be, how we talked about the egg thing, you may want to shelve this for later. The reason why the tribe took advantage of it is because they're well versed in it. And it may be one of those things where we don't have enough time to get the plan done. So it might be one of the things you back burner.
Right. And so
I do the research, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time if you find out the property owner wants to keep it
right
opportunity zone.
Right. And that's where, maybe taking just a closer refined look at the standards and maybe some of the allowed uses as opposed to trying to do a complete zoning overhaul, maybe for timing makes more sense. So. And just as a point of clarification, we are going to add the 2 letters in front of these. So they may stay EOA on the future land use map, but on the zoning map, we want to add BC EOA and RR EOA because they have different, uses and standards. I think it's important that we make that distinction somewhere on the map as well. Like if that's how they're referred to in code, we should refer to them on the map the same way. So doesn't need a zoning change for that. I think Christina will let us just do that as an edit.
Okay.
More letters.
Yeah, it is more letters, but yeah. Okay, so if nothing else, we could move to the next one, which is our highway commercial zone. So it is not a predominant zone per se, but it is certainly one that comes with its fair share of maybe barriers or issues. The first thing just quickly that I want to point out is what we talked about internally is this portion right here on the map, which is on the south side of the highway. It's 4 lots. 3 of them have historic residential properties on it. Those property owners, I can guarantee, would welcome the opportunity for that to go back to residential zoning because they are unable to essentially do anything to their property, and I don't think they have any desire to change it. And then there is a vacant piece of property in there that is currently split by I believe it's City of Sequim dedicated right of way, but it's like an S that splits the lot essentially in two. And it's been for sale for years. And there was a time when it got listed, and we probably talked to 20 or 30 people in a month, and not a single person could come up with a good use for it because of what it's currently zoned, because residential is not allowed. And that's really the only thing that anybody could make work there. Now, I have to assume it was changed to highway commercial because there was an opportunity potentially for redevelopment in the future. It's just we haven't seen it. There hasn't really been a desire for it. Most of the properties there would actually want to do more to their residential uses. So is this, just before we get into the rest of it, is that one that we would consider letting go back to residential? Or is that something we do want to keep as HC for the, prospective future?
Yeah, I say go back. I mean, that's a weird spot, I mean, that's a weird spot to stop,
Yeah. Okay.
for any kind of commercial use. I mean, that particular spot, if that
Right.
makes
And
sense.
so like the access road to this development here goes through it. So this is a residential subdivision in there. And so it's really all entirely residential other than those 4 lots. And like I've stated, 3 of them have homes on them already. So short of them getting knocked down and redeveloped, it's going to stay residential. And so if we moved it back, I don't think we'd get much opposition. And I'm sure the person who owns the lot that they can't seem to sell would probably welcome it too. So not to speak for them because I haven't talked to them, but I can imagine. Yeah, we will. Okay, so the point of this zone really, if you look at this little corner right here, I lost there it is, where you've got the hotel, I believe it's the Quality Inn, you've got Applebee's, you've got Taco Time. That's what we expect in that kind of zone, and potentially like a gas station and convenience store too. That is how the code and the zone is currently set up today. There's another property owner that would again probably welcome a zoning change. It's the Big Blue Shed. They've had a heck of a time retaining tenants there because of the restrictiveness of the zone. So I don't know if we don't want to do away with the zone because I think it has a lot of merit and good qualities to it, but there may be the ability to allow for more uses in it that would allow those properties to fill up. I mean, D&K Rentals was a non-conforming use in the zone at the time. It's now gone and that property's vacant, but we haven't seen a lot of action on it. So is it the zone that's restricting? That'd be a good conversation to have with the property owner. So that's just, do we like the purpose of the highway commercial zone? Are there additional uses we'd like to see? I don't think we want to propose getting rid of it, but due to at least some of the complaints, or not necessarily complaints, but hardships that it's caused for some of these property owners, do we want to at least entertain maybe looking at additional uses for the zone?
Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to a couple people who have wanted to, put their business in there and they couldn't. And to me, it seemed like, it was like, really? Because
Yeah.
that's something that, yeah. So more.
Yeah, it's a great location, right? Like being right there. And that is it one that, the properties aren't huge, but are they property? If we did consider rezoning them, would we consider moving them to RC? Those were conversations we had, and we're like, we kind of like like I said, this corner that has the hotel, the restaurant, and the drive-through business there, that kind of is meeting the intent of what we would like to see there. And so doing away with it maybe isn't exactly what we want to do, but like I said, maybe upping some of the uses that are allowed would be appropriate. So
Yeah, I agree with that. Does anybody?
cool. Keeping and adding uses, yeah. And then Emily, will you just pan out just so that we can, there is one other portion that I think as we already hit on earlier, it's the Black Bear Diner and the other hotel that's down here. And so they're in that zone as well. So again, good uses for the zone. That's, that's what we want to see. So no real reason to go changing a good thing. However, we could expand that one as we talked about. So do we want to encourage expanding the highway commercial in that area, or do we want it to just be CMU? Those are conversations that we can continue to have. All right, so I don't think there's not a lot left on highway commercial. We'll move to the next one, which should be pretty quick, unless Carla.
Yeah, I just wanted to do a check-in with the Planning Commission. We are at 7:30. How are you feeling? We can probably finish the list tonight, but we can also roll it over to the next meeting. So it's at your pleasure.
Yeah, I say let's finish it. I mean, do
Cool.
you anticipate any of these future zones, being a half an hour, or not zones, but land
We could
use?
probably spend that long on maybe the HTLI, but but that's it. We don't have to. I think I've got some good information for you guys that may help. So
Okay.
heavy commercial will be quick. I think it's fine. It's pretty much entirely built out the way that it is with warehouse and heavy commercial uses. I don't believe there's any vacant properties in there. That's where we see like the city shop. I believe there may be a substation. There's either a gas company that's in there. So like all the uses fit, utilized properly. So I don't think, again, it's one of those ones, don't need to go changing a good thing. And don't need to go making those things non-conforming when we don't have to. And there's maybe a desire for like this property here to become highway or heavy commercial warehousing instead of highway commercial. But that's about it. And I haven't had that conversation in like 3 years. So it was a while ago.
That's down by Red Dog and stuff, right?
So that it's on the other side of the but yeah, the general location of it is definitely right there by Red Dog. So where the city shop is.
Okay.
Yeah. You are correct.
Okay.
So unless anybody has some major concerns over it, I think we can skip to HTLI.
Sorry, I do have a question. So part of the heavy commercial warehouse was the city shop. So at the end of it, we are proposing that those types of uses become a public facility
Thank you.
use. And
Yeah.
so would that take away enough inventory, like acreage of it, to make that zone kind of a one-off, or is there still enough parcels that would merit having its own zone?
That's a good question, because I think the city shop property takes up a good portion of it. However, there are some active uses that are historic or pre-existing there that it wouldn't. I can't imagine that they would be redeveloped anytime soon because they are like I said, one of them's like a provider of gas. I can't remember exactly what company it is. One of them's more of like a industrial. They've got a bunch of like dirt and fill material that's on there on the south side of the highway. So those seem like ones that maybe if when we open the docketing session potentially for property owners to come forward and say, hey, this would be one that maybe I would like to rezone. I'm done using it as this. Let's talk about what can I do in the future. Until that happens and until there seems to be more of a desire or appetite for it, I don't know how much time we need to spend on it now. But that is, I mean, I think that's appropriate. And I think through the LCA, we may be able to identify what, if once it goes to PF for public facilities, what's left as heavy commercial warehouse. So, okay. Does anybody have any follow up on that? No. Okay. All right. So the HTLI. This is probably the zone we get the most comments on, feedback from. There were property owners that went to all of the various sessions that SCJ put on. I've encouraged them to send emails. I invited them to come today, but they were all either busy or preoccupied, but I did at least let them know that I would echo their sentiments that they are interested in potentially rezoning. And one of them was one of the last docketed items from the last go round. They were looking at potentially doing kind of like a split zoning, and it's this property here that's just south of this development. There's like a topographic change that essentially splits the property in two, if you will. Thank you. So it's like up here somewhere. And so they were looking at basically converting this back half to be residential like this, and then having the portion of the lot that fronted on Washington converted or left as HTLI. So if HTLI is a zone we want to keep, that's fine, but they are looking to develop the other half of it as residential. So there's interest certainly in potentially rezoning. We've gotten interest from this property owner that it's just basically kind of in tandem for what the future uses could be. This property up here basically just has a house on it, and that's it. And do we really want a high-tech light industrial zone right here next to, the road to our park, and right here is a daycare, right? So there are existing uses in the area that don't necessarily align with high-tech light industrial. And we have heard from certain property owners that they would welcome an opportunity to change it. Now, there is one here in this little L shape that is currently utilizing the zone and has a business that would fit in that. So, there may be one that wants to keep it, but I don't necessarily know if we have to maybe get rid of all of the uses, but there may be a better utilization of those properties. And since its inception, I don't know if I could, since in my 5+ years being here, nobody's developed in the HTLI zone. So I just have to wonder if it's truly serving the city and the city of Sequim any good in that zone. Now, if we looked at changing it, are we losing that opportunity for those types of businesses to ever come in? That's just something to consider. But I think based on the feedback we've gotten, I think that there's potential for welcoming a change. So I would just turn that over to you and see, what do you guys think? I mean, you live here as well, so.
Well, you talked about losing the opportunity for, high-tech light industrial, but, there really isn't a lot of people that are interested in that. And so we're losing opportunity in a lot of other areas.
I would agree.
Eileen?
I agree too. I could be out, some kind of mixed commercial or something rather than, I've read the definition, I think 3 times, and I'm still not sure what it is. So.
Well, and that, that side of town down there, could use, an influx of something.
Right.
I mean,
that's like I said, like the next time you're passing Brown going east on Washington, just look at it and try to look as far down as you can, because it's a straight shot and it's pretty much undeveloped on both sides until you get to like the Black Bear Diner and everything. So there is opportunity for development. It's just what kind do we want it to be?
Yes, Dennis.
I totally agree as well. In fact, it looks like we have an opportunity to kind of merge the CMU and the highway commercial into that area and get rid of the HTLI.
Okay.
I mean,
And I guess just so that we're not going to get rid of the HTLI probably in its entirety, because this portion out here, which is PNNL Labs, it's in UGA currently. That is probably the best type of use for that kind of a zone. So like that one, we could probably leave totally unchanged, because that is all, I guess, I think it's state owned land in that sense. So I don't think most of it. Yeah.
Travis, when property owners have spoken to you about what uses they want to do, is it more aligned with the CMU zone or the highway commercial?
Yeah. So the one that was interested in the split zone was definitely trying to just get more residential. Like that was their immediate plan, was to have this become residential. But I don't think that they would be opposed to more unrestrictive land use types. So this one is more just wanting to kind of get the pulse of what's out there, what our proposal may be, what are our recommendations, so that they can have a better understanding. But they are both property owners that want to be involved and that want to come and have conversations with us. So I think that lends itself to they're open to new ideas. So and then down here on the other side of Washington, we've got the existing, I think they're the Elk Creek apartments. And then there's some historic, I believe there's a historic farm that's there that is currently zoned HTLI. I think that's one of the last lots in the city that has cows. So just kind of keeping that in mind, like if we do allow for it to change, you may not see as many cows. So. Yeah. Well, until the park goes in.
So do you recommend that we reach out to the property owners and maybe set up a meeting to talk to them about
Yes.
their hopes and dreams?
Yeah, and like I said, because they've indicated to us that they're open, we have their contact info, and that's why I reached out to them today to let them know, like, hey, we're having this at least very initial high level conversation about potential zoning changes. So if you want to be there, this would be a good opportunity. But that I would do what I'm doing now and at least share that they've reached out and that there appears to be an appetite for change. So.
Okay.
And it'd be good to hear exactly what they would want to do to Carla's point. What is it, if they could change it to anything, what would they want it to be? And there may be pictures of Post-it notes and stuff from the SEJ workshops that we could look back on, but that they may have detailed that. So we'll dig through the data we got.
Okay. I think we're all on the same page though with that.
Okay.
Oh, the next one up is your favorite, Elaine.
All right. Yeah. So the next one is the Lifestyle District, previously known as the Senior Lifestyle District. But for equity's sake, I think we changed it to just the Lifestyle District. I wrote in my notes, and I don't mean this in the truest sense, but it is kind of the anything goes zone, as in like you could do single family, you could do multifamily, you can do retail, you can do restaurants, you could do professional services, basically like your bank, your accountant, your chiropractor, your dentist, almost anything except like a big box store and like warehousing and industrial stuff. So it's a zone we've seen a lot more activity on for multifamily housing in recent years, which I think is awesome. Especially considering its proximity to schools and the fact that it's not just housing for 55 and up. It is and it's not they're not 55 and up communities. They're not nursing homes, which there are a lot of in there already. So it is more of a shift towards just providing multifamily housing. And there are a lot of existing commercial buildings in there that stay pretty full from what I can tell. So I don't have a huge desire to change anything about the zone other than maybe some of the zoning standards. So like things that we've run into are, and I think I talked about it at our last meeting, the inability to do fee simple lot ownership on attached housing. It's like if we're going to allow an apartment building to go in, we should allow a fourplex unit to go in where the lots can be owned independently. Like what's the difference other than ownership if it's outright allowed as a use, right? So there are things that we can change just in the back end that would maybe make the zone even more attractive for future development. But I think in its application, it's not working. It seems to be doing what it was intended to do, and it's a zone that I wouldn't be opposed to seeing actually expand, because I think it is a more mixed use and kind of, it's a lifestyle zone, right? So you can live and work and do the things that you need other than potentially go to the grocery store, because I think that would be one of the uses that wouldn't necessarily be allowed, like for a Safeway, right? But maybe there's an opportunity for a convenience store, things like that. So I kind of like the zone. So I've been waiting all night to hear Eileen's thoughts on it. So, but because I think it has changed from when it was initially established to what it is today and what we're seeing proposed and developed in it today versus maybe what was once set up. So.
Okay, well, Eileen, let's give you the floor.
Thanks for this opportunity.
Yeah.
I live in the lifestyle zone, and it's pretty restrictive for seniors, and I think it's pretty. I think it would be better the way you described it compared to what it says here. It says it's senior, 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 and I think I think there's plenty of senior places in our community already. I mean, we had Lavender Meadows that started out as affordable housing, and then they changed it to 55 and older. And they're not selling very many.
Yeah, and just to kind of echo that, I mean, and not to say that it's maybe been the main reason, but there are requirements that are in zoning or that are in development standards today that are like the requirement of providing playgrounds and things like that. If you are a 55 and up community, you don't have to provide playgrounds. Go figure. But that is something that maybe from a developer, they're like, well, we can fill those units either way, whether it's 55 or not. But if we don't have to build a playground, then our decision's been made for us, right? So those are things that we're identifying as like, why make it different for certain types of housing and not the other? So there are things that I think were put in code to maybe steer towards senior housing in the past. And so those are things we could look at removing. Absolutely.
Well, and I think the momentum in our community is also the need for people under 55 to be able to afford housing. And the cheapest housing available now is, modular homes or trailer, and they're all designated 55 and older. So that's not helping us have housing for people who we want and appreciate in our community that are younger than us. And so I guess the designation of the senior area why don't we just say multi-family housing?
Sure. They did a good job dropping the S off the title, but forgot to remove it from the zone. And
why separate us?
Yeah.
Why make us different in there? And I just had some friends move here, and we're at a gathering, and they said, well, there's just so many seniors here. And I said, wait a minute. Did you go to the Irrigation Festival Family Day and see how many kids were there? And we've got schools full. We've had that designation just for years and years, but I I think it does a disservice to continue that. And the more inclusive we can be, I think the better.
Cool. So a scrubbing of the zone's intent is certainly an easy one to do. But if there are any use changes or anything that you would suggest, we'd be open to hearing that
No.
as well.
Well,
Yeah, we're
like-
changing the name.
I
Yeah.
like it. I mean, I think Eileen's right. Like, let's just get rid of the, senior designation. I mean, there's a lot of businesses and friends in the trail that I frequent in
Yep.
that.
The
in that
ODT
zone.
goes right through it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
we do
the
have
city's
senior-
future park's going to be there. And so,
and we've
Yeah.
got senior housing over thanks for reminding me, but there's the Vintage, there's a place over there that are, like spot places for
Sherwood,
senior housing
yeah.
around.
And we did work on, manufactured home, parks.
Right.
And a lot of those are designated 55 and older,
Right,
Right.
and the new park that's on Hendrickson, and the name is Family.
oh, do you know?
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I
but-
can't remember. The Ruth McCord.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's going to be a beautiful place.
Yep.
But you're going to have wheelchair access and all kinds of stuff because there's not very many young families close by. So if that's going to be a great facility for our community, I think we need to think about incorporating all of us,
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah, and I'll just in its current state, the uses are not restricted to seniors. I'll just say that, but it's historic build out, and what is there is certainly to accommodate to seniors. So yeah, I think we can very easily scrub the intent to not have the call out to the many stages of senior life. And we could just drop that and say the many stages of life. No, I mean, but, we can figure out a way to make it feel more inclusive, and even try to promote it as being a more inclusive zone. But yeah.
Great.
Thank
you.
Like you said, just through many stages of senior life, because living in place, a healthcare facility, it doesn't have to be a senior to be a healthcare living in place. So,
Right.
That'd be an easy scrub.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it probably should have been done when they dropped the S from the SLD and just changed it to LD, but they didn't.
So Travis, to kind of earlier conversation about the school, do you think the lifestyle district should be expanded then in the LDR area that's just south
Right here.
of the school? Yeah.
I don't think it probably wouldn't be appropriate for CMU. If we didn't want it to have commercial, if we wanted it to just be residential, this is potentially one of those areas we could look at as maybe being like the more medium density residential.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think if we were just trying to pick one of the zones in its current state or that currently exists, the LD or even the downtown mixed use potentially either one of those could expand to absorb that area.
Okay. And is there any interest, do you think, from the planning commissioners to change the name? The lifestyle? Does that still seem to fit? Or I can't
That's
tell
not
you what
PTSD,
the option
yeah.
would be. We could go back and research it. If you feel like it's fine, but it is a unique district name. I will tell you that.
Because it could very easily just be a mixed use or, lifestyle mixed use.
Lifestyle mixed use, may or may not be a CMU. I mean, we could look at
Yeah.
how the uses overlap between CMU, but, is that a name that is, yeah,
have
is it an affectionate name in Squim that if we changed it, it would be a big deal? Or is it something that you think we should look at? Or is it ambivalent?
I think it's fine.
Okay.
I'm the only one irritated. Just change the content. That's fine with me.
Okay.
All right. Cool. So we will move to our next one, which is, I think, our smallest zone as far as land capacity is concerned, which is up here next to our roundabout, off of, I believe, Port Williams. We've got our neighborhood business zone. It is adjacent. It's what contains Hardee's Market. It contains the Rock Plaza Strip Mall and what was formerly a landscaping business that is now, I believe, reverted back to just somebody lives in the house. So its intent is, as you can see, to allow retail sales and services needed by neighborhood residents, so that you could essentially maybe walk to it, get what you need, and walk back home. The Rock Plaza development has certainly faced its challenges in filling up tenants. And so there are some uses there that on their face may not be exactly neighborhood businessy, but they were allowed for, they're there. And I guess, what is there any desire to, modify this, change this? It is kind of a convenience store type zone. One of the conversations we had was, should the retail uses be more aligned with maybe the highway commercial type uses because of Old Olympic Highway that goes through there, and it being kind of the entrance for those that live to the north out like in Sunland, in that area. There's a lot of residential homes and folks that use this as their access to Sequim. So is there any interest in potentially allowing more like potentially auto-oriented uses, drive-through type things, potentially like a gas station? We've had an inquiry about a gas station there in the past. And I don't necessarily think that's a horrible idea, but this is where we have those conversations. So do we like the neighborhood business zone? Do we think it needs to have more uses allowed in it? I kind of wish Ethan was here because he feels very strongly one way about it. But yeah, just kind of trying to figure out, what do you guys think about it? There's only three lots in the entirety of the city that have this designation.
Couldn't it just go to commercial mixed use and still, I mean, that way it kind of opens up if people want to do something
It could.
different than what's already existing?
It is surrounded entirely by residential uses. And I know that the CMU in its description says it should fit, with adjacent residential uses. So I don't know that that's entirely off base. So I would anticipate, just knowing some of the developments in the area and the pushback we got on just the Lavender Meadows development going in there, that there's a good chance that any increase or intensification of the commercial uses there, we may get some pushback from some of the residents as well. So I can't guarantee that. It's just my own assumption, and whether we care or not, like this is where we have that opportunity to have the conversation. So
Anybody?
I would just say, so like,
Can we revisit that after we get Ethan's intake, or, his opinion, if he's really passionate about it?
yeah,
As a
Carla, do you have can you share his thoughts if you're able to summarize them? Because we've had a couple meetings with him. So,
well, I think where we landed on it is that the idea of neighborhood business is not really what's happening there. And in the neighborhood business, and I think the concept under kind of new urbanism planning is like the corner store idea, where you have these little corners on major intersections that can be commercial, and people that live around there can walk or bike to it. And it's that kind of that quintessential, like, cafe, and get your coffee and meet your neighbors. And that, that happens downtown Sequim more than it would happen at that intersection. So I think that what we all landed on is that we felt like the name wasn't really reflective of what was happening there. Nobody really had an issue with having commercial in that intersection. I mean, speaking for myself, like when we start looking at rezoning properties, that's oftentimes when comprehensive plans can go sideways. And so that was one of the things when Travis said what he said, like everyone around there kind of likes what is there. Like then it's like, well, I don't want to borrow trouble. We have other real things that we need to work through on the comprehensive plan. So the idea really, I thought, was, do we like the idea of these kind of intersections that we maybe could, that are kind of surrounded by residential, that we could look at applying the neighborhood business in other parts of the city if they felt appropriate? Or should we address it more through a corner store provision, which we can do in the zoning ordinance, where you could allow for corner stores as an allowed use in the LDR with certain locational criteria?
Which
And
which we kind of do have through PRD regulations. You can incorporate commercial, but there are more standards to that. So sorry to interject, but
no, that's good. Yeah. So, and I mean, I guess I think we don't think it's broke. And it was more of a planning, just a conversation about ourselves. I mean, Ethan, I felt very strongly that if it's going to be neighborhood business, it should be neighborhood business. And so some uses that maybe have been allowed in the past should not have been allowed. And we should be very more strict about when business licenses come in about allowing what should be in there or not. So I think that's did I characterize that right?
Yeah, he basically was one way or the other. It's like, if we're going to call it neighborhood business, let's make sure that the uses going in are neighborhood business, or let's just allow, if we want different types of commercial uses to go in, let's change the name of it to a more appropriate designation.
Okay, Larry?
Just an observation. We've all been here a long time. Rock Plaza wasn't that successful.
Correct.
And they weren't getting tenants in.
Right.
And it actually was an eyesore with all the vacancies there
Mhm.
to a degree. So I think letting those other businesses go in there, if that means we change the name, I think that's what we got to do.
Or open up the uses that are allowed in it,
Yeah.
and keep it.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
my personal opinion.
You definitely need to do a little tweaking on the zone intent because very few people walk there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's auto, and if anything, it's auto drive through, break and go to the coffee and then go back around and go around the city construction when they do the water main.
Yeah.
Hike
And
through. It's not walk through.
Right. And that's kind of why I propose, like, do we want to consider like some more highway commercial uses, because it is adjacent Old Olympic Highway. And because that is the entry point to Sequim for a number of the county residents that come to use our services. So I think we could potentially leave the name, but take a look at the uses that are allowed. Okay, I think that sounds like a good idea.
Okay.
And that might be easier to do than an overhaul. And I guess just to expand, so the PRD, planned residential development, which you can do as an alternative to the subdivision, it's still a subdivision, but it gives you the opportunity to incorporate commercial uses into your otherwise residential subdivision. So we do have development standards for allowing that if people so desire. Nobody's really taken advantage of it other than, I think, the original Cedar Ridge development, which I don't believe was a PRD in the extent that our code talks about today. It was a PUD. So anyway. All right. If nothing else on NB, we can go to our last, I guess, zone and land use designation that align on the maps, and then the rest of them are all specific to the land use. So the planned resort community, which is down by the marina, I'm sure everybody has heard there's a small developer that wants to propose a plan in there, and they have indicated that it could be any day. We don't know when, but they have done their due diligence and are essentially just getting their final tweaks and things ready, and that, at least that's what we've been told. So the zone in its truest sense is for planned resort communities. However, the underlying zoning and zoning standards is R48. So if anybody were to try to build in it as of today, they would be restricted to R48 standards until the time that a master plan overlay is proposed and then effectively changes everything that goes with it. So I don't know if there's much you guys want to talk about for this one, because it's probably one that will be decided through a master plan more so than changes to the comp plan and zoning standards.
Okay, anybody want to weigh in on this one? Yeah, I mean,
Okay. All right. That was easy. All right. So the next ones, and we can kind of go through these pretty quickly as we've proposed. I think we've proposed that open spaces, which are just these ones, just that are pretty nearby to the park. They're either owned by Department of Transportation or Fish and Wildlife. So we would just propose that they stay open space on the future land use map. There's no need to move them into any other designation. So I think we're good keeping them like that. Parks, so these ones that are either P, and I'll just go ahead and lump NP in with them, that are designated for the park areas, in addition to, well, Carla, correct me, are we wanting to change, do we want to have a PF on our land use map as well as zoning map?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we talked about is taking anything that is currently a public facility as designated in code and putting and redesignating it as PF. So schools, parks, the library, anything that is already built out as a public facility would get redesignated as PF. And that would be on not only the future land use map, but also on our zoning map. And the reason for that is it removes the requirement for conditional use permits. So it removes basically a permitting hurdle that they have to go through to essentially keep developing on a site that is already established as a public facility. So it's really just kind of like us, for a lack of a better term, getting in the way and saying, wait, let us review this and make you go to the hearing examiner. To like the library went through a conditional use permit to get their new building or their new remodel approved. And the hearing was, I'm not going to say, it was really a formality more than anything else. And if it's really a formality to approve something, what's the point of putting up the unnecessary barrier? So if we can just designate it as a public facility and allow public facilities to pull permits and just go and skip kind of the I guess the added barriers and restrictions, why not? So that's kind of our stance, but interested to see if you guys think differently. And we used to have PF zones and then they went away, and so we're kind of proposing to go back.
no, I don't have an issue with that at all. Does anybody else? No, I feel like that makes more sense. Oh, yes, Karen.
Who approves the plans for the public facility?
If it's a building permit, it would be the city. So like if we would review, like if the Public Works Department for their city shop, if we're talking about rezoning that highway or that heavy commercial warehouse zone to PF because that's where the existing city shop is, then any new plans would still have to satisfy development standards, design regulations, or what have you. But it would be reviewed administratively as opposed to needing to go through a hearing examiner process, which is more lengthy and more expensive. And so for facilities like the library, it's a much more arduous and drawn out process maybe than it needs to be to get them to getting the public facility that the community needs than to just allow them to basically submit a building permit. So, but yeah, there are still standards by which that they would have to meet,
Right.
but
There are, but it's kind of a checks and balances. And I realize I'm the outlier here, but it's kind of somebody looking over your shoulder to make sure the city is actually doing what the city should do. It's kind of like having an audit on your facility plan.
And so I think for new, if they wanted to establish a new facility, I think we could still make them go through the conditional use process, absolutely, and then get that, basically have a rezone or an overlay provided. And so when the actual use is first established, we can have that checks and balances. But once it's there, is there a benefit to continued checks and balances? Or, the school is the
That part I would, a remodel of an existing facility would be different than a brand new facility.
right. And that, I think that's the extent that we want to propose is things that are established could be zoned that as such, but anything new would need to go through the conditional use permit process as we have in code today.
Okay.
All right.
Cool. I think that's it. We did it.
Yeah.
It's a good meeting.
Yeah, it's a long one. Brings me back to memories of when Barry was here.
Yeah, maybe Christina will have a long director's report.
Okay. So, anything else on that you guys wanted to put before
Not
us?
unless Carla's got some clarifications.
No, I just wanted to say thank you, Travis.
Yeah.
And
Good
thank you,
job.
planning commissioners. Like that was a heavy lift that y'all did tonight. You really, you validated and confirmed some of the things that the staff was thinking that we'd been talking internally and really been able to give us some clear direction. So I just want to thank you for hanging in there and this is what SQUIM comprehensive planning looks like.
Thank you. Okay, director's report. Do you have anything for us, Christine?
It's actually going to be quite lengthy, so please buckle up.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Seriously, thank you so much again. Just echoing what Carla said, really tremendous work tonight. So thank you for that. In terms of other information, Habitat for Humanity is going to the hearing examiner May 22nd. And so that, I believe, is 48 units on that project. So that is expected to be moving forward. One of the things that we did not talk about here, but as I want to give you guys a heads up that you will see this in addition to the agenda that you saw regarding the comprehensive plan. Travis and my paralegal are working very diligently on revising and update our Title 17, which happens to, it's inappropriately called subdivisions, but it's our boundary line adjustments, our binding site plans, our vacation and plat alterations,
Plats, what will
final plat.
unit lot subdivisions, which we don't currently have in code, but we will. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a pretty significant lift, but and there's a lot of changes that staff have addressed over the years that need to be addressed. And we feel comfortable that this is a standalone chapter that should not be affected too much by the comprehensive plan and frankly by all of the myriad of changes that the state legislature continues to make on land use and zoning and things like that. For the most part, they have left subdivisions and associated things covered in RCW 5817 relatively intact and stable. So we are going to be working on that in earnest. So just know that just when you think that we won't have something, there's a decent chance that we may. So,
Okay.
and am I missing anything else? No. Okay. So, one other thing. You may have heard a little bit about this already. But, and I may have mentioned it once before, there is it's looking more like we may be seeing an annexation request sometime later this year from a little section of the urban growth area called Flora's Acres. They're having some challenges with their sewer line, and they want to update the water line, and for a variety of reasons that I won't get into at this point, they're looking to annex into the city limits. So there is a very high likelihood that that would be on deck later this summer, perhaps fall. So again, more to come on that. And we just remember that as well when we've got these things coming on the plate. There's a lot of unwritten work that is being done in other areas on these draft agendas. So
Okay, thank you.
you bet.
One question for you. I know that we had closed the application period for the planning commissioners, and we have 3 applicants. Is that correct?
That is
Okay.
my understanding. And I'm seeing a thumbs up from Emily.
Okay, so then are we gonna move forward as we have before where, like, me and the mayor come in and we do an interview process and then, okay.
Yeah, we should follow our process because as Emily, I'm going to look to you on this, that not only is that been our consistent process for the last several years, but it may be called out in bylaws or something. Because I remember the process came from somewhere, so it may be a resolution.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure of the origin, but I would strongly recommend that we maintain our same process that we've been using.
Okay, and then also when you're setting up interview times, if the more time that I had, the better, as far as like, it's hard for me.
In advance, you mean?
It's hard
Okay.
for me if you call on a Wednesday and say, hey, can you be here tomorrow at noon?
Understood. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
So
just because I take care of my dad and, stuff like
I
that, so.
understand more than you
Yeah.
know. So
So a couple days, 2 or 3 days is I can be more flexible.
okay, that is very good to know. I see Emily taking notes over there, so she will be mindful of that as
And
well.
she's great about calling me too and saying, hey, so. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that concludes my report.
Okay. Does anybody have anything for good of the order? Okay, then do we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, is there a second? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Meeting is adjourned at 8:17.